Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mainstream Indie Music channel. We talk about all things indie music, and welcome. If you've been a listener, I really appreciate you, the work that you've put in listening. There's so many channels out there that talk about these subjects, and yet you keep coming back here. I appreciate it. And to all of you new members, we still get a lot of majority new people that come in and listen. Welcome. We talk a lot about indie music in the 2000s and forward, especially. We try to kind of go back in history from time to time as well, but a lot of the time is from the 2000s. And I did make a whole episode. This was I think it was episode 3 on, and I hope I'm saying this right. It's funny, one of the listeners of this episode really called me out on the mispronunciation of several people's names, including Mikkel. I hope I'm saying that right. I totally deserved it, especially in the beginning. I was really trying to just get my traction on YouTube and was getting started and so forth. So I kind of butchered that, and I think his last name is Jolet. I think I called him Michael Jolet like several times. It was so bad, so bad. I didn't take a few seconds to kind of pause and do research back then. I mean, I would, but it was really kind of based off of my own memory and quick research. Nowadays, I really do try to dig deeper and get more and more info for you guys. So if you want a kind of brief history of the Airborne Toxic event, I haven't made a video yet on the band itself, but there's some kind of background knowledge for you if you want to check that out. And Mikkel has really, really interesting history behind himself, especially his growing up. I mean, check out his book. But even during the start of the band, the Airborne Toxic event, his story is really interesting. However, this week's episode is different because we're talking about a moment in time where I feel like personally a lot of fans kind of split ways with the Airborne Toxic event. And there's a reason for it. I'm going to talk about that today. It is pretty much during their release of their third album, Such Hot Blood, leading into the next few albums called Dope Machine. And I think it's called Sounds of God and Whiskey. Sorry if I kind of butchered that fifth album, but during the release of those, and I know the fourth and fifth album, they were released very close to each other. It was almost like a double album, which is why I kind of grouped them together. But there was a bit of a gap between the third and fourth. But there was a huge tonal shift during those albums. Nowadays, too, if you look at the Airborne Toxic event, their lineup is different. Several of their members have left. There's several new members. But for a lot of the fans of the Airborne Toxic event, they know that it really changed when their bass player Noah left after the release of their third album, Such Hot Blood. So before we get to him leaving, though, the third album itself, what happened there? Well, there are a lot of theories coming around, and I specifically remember the third one coming out. To be honest with you, I think as well as many people really like the first two albums, and especially the second one for me, All at Once, is one of their best albums, completely all the way through. And in my personal opinion, maybe you agree with me, maybe you don't, but Such Hot Blood was supposed to be a continuation of that All at Once album. If you group them side by side, they sound very, very similar to each other in tone, in musical instruments being used. To me, it's almost a brother-sister album, Now, the one difference, and this might have been to their downfall, in Such Hot Blood is there is more and more inclusion of an orchestra in that album. In fact, I think it's one of their heaviest kind of orchestra strings used albums to date, is Such Hot Blood. A lot of violin, a lot of cello playing in the background. I don't know if it's a synth orchestra or if they actually did use an orchestra at times, but It's more acoustic sounding, a little bit lighter sounding than their previous albums. I mean, don't get me wrong, there definitely are like guitar and bass guitar and so on and so forth at times during their album, but I believe it to be a little bit on the lighter side. Even their lead single, Timeless, has really heavy orchestra in the background. Again, liken it to All I Ever Wanted off of the All at Once album. Very similar, right? Now, during this period of time, this would be right around the early 2010s is when this got released. I believe if this orchestra heavy album got released maybe even 5 years earlier, 10 especially, but I think even 5 years earlier, it would have been much bigger than when it got released. But during the 2010s, in the music scene itself, there was starting to be a huge tonal shift, a huge reliance on electronic music, a huge reliance on beats rather than maybe actual drums. Hip-hop beats were starting to be included more and more. And I think it was kind of hard to ignore that tonal shift. Kind of gone were the days of the huge orchestras. People were kind of getting tired of it. They wanted to really dive into this new era of music. And again, personal opinion, I think Airborne wanted to keep track with that. Because don't get me wrong, it's not like Airborne was a pop band by any means. Sometime Around Midnight was pretty big, and such songs like Changing and Numb off of the All at Once album were pretty big, but I wouldn't call them massive. I would still call them an indie band, maybe unless you're in specific parts of California, but you would really have to listen to like an alternative radio station at that time to hear some of their stuff. And I think mostly you would just get like Sometime Around Midnight, and that would pretty much be it. And they noticed. So I think what Airborne did was they changed their sound coming off of that third album to maybe stay relevant. Now, here's where the conspiracy theories come in, because how people found out was an Instagram post off of Noah saying that he was fired. Now, of course, Airborne has declined to comment on it. It's interesting because on Reddit, they actually opened up an official Reddit post where they themselves were moderators on that Reddit. And it's interesting because somebody does point blank ask them what happened to Noah. And they pretty much get very, very vague. They say, hey, this is a private matter. We're not going to air it out to you guys. Please respect that and wish him all the best. I have dug, and pretty much nobody has commented on what happened ever since. Now, kind of just putting two and two together, you might just simply say, hey, you know what? Noah was kind of the musical director of the band during that period of time. He had a huge orchestra music background, and I kind of side with it. I believe he wanted to keep going in that orchestra direction. The rest of the band did not. Like I said, ever since, Airborne is still a band to this day. They released an album in 2024 even. And while they did change their tone, they kind of have gone back to the orchestra sound. But what do you guys think? You see in the picture in my indie rating, I put Such Hot Blood album right in the middle. I would say right in the indie genre. I would say most people know who the band is, and if you do, you probably have listened to the third album. What do y'all think? I'll talk to you and see you next week.